This week on Books Cubed.
He's born with these strange sort of things on his back, and at first they can't figure out what it is, but it's weird, and people kind of, when the neighbors learn, they kind of freak out about it, and through several different experiences, he ends up in a freak show in the 1930s.
Good adventures, everybody. I'm Melissa Bonzek, and welcome to episode 135 of Books Cubed, the show where I chat with authors you should be reading. Today, I am chatting with author Mark Mustian. I hope I said that right. I think I did. He says his name in just a minute. Anyway, we are talking about his book, Boy with Wings. It is a multiple award winner and a page turner, and I highly recommend it. It's all about a boy who was born with strange things on his back that might be wings, and he ends up in freak shows in the 1930s. The characters just jump off the page. I could not put this book down. So I am really excited to jump in and get right to the interview, and I will see you after. So I want to welcome Mark Mustian. He is the author of the novels The Return, and I'm going to say it wrong, The Gendarme?
The gendarme.
Gendarme. Oh. And the latter was a finalist for the Dayton International Literary Peace Prize and shortlisted for the Sorian International Award for Writing. Did I say that one right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay, great. It won the Florida Gold Book Award for fiction and has been published in 10 languages. Fantastic. The founder of the Word of South Festival of Literature and Music in Tallahassee, Florida. His next novel, The Boy with the Wings, which we're going to talk a little bit about today, is the winner of the Grand Prize for Fiction from Next Generation Indie Book Awards. Congratulations. And has received numerous other honors, including winning the Bronze Prize for Historical Fiction from Independent Publishers Book Awards, and is being named a finalist for the Hawthorne Award for Fiction. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
I found, I mean, I told him before we started, don't give me any spoilers for the book. I'm a little more than a third of the way through. And I thought, I'm reading it and thinking, this is just the strangest book, but I couldn't put it down. You have blended historical, literary, paranormal. There might be other genres blended in there. Was this where did this come from?
Well, I wish I had a quick answer to this because I've been asked it a lot, but I don't really know. I don't know. Have you ever read, Melissa, the book Geek Love? Are you familiar with that book?
No, I don't think I am.
Yeah, so I had for a long time I'd wanted to write a book that sort of set in a freak show, and I don't even know why. Maybe it was going to the North Florida Fair as a child and seeing the world's smallest horse or the wild man from Borneo that would chase you around or whatever. But I had I had this general idea to do this, and my agent said, "Well, have you read Geek Love?" And I went and read it, and boy, is it good. And I was thinking, man, I don't, that's really something. I don't know that I could do that. But I kept it in mind, and I've worked on it and stopped, and worked on it and stopped, and finally, I just sort of, it just sort of came together. It's just one of those things as a writer, sometimes it works, or sometimes you fight your way through the whole thing, and then sometimes it just goes. And this one eventually just went.
Now, was this was, I know you've been published independent, you've been with the Big Five, you've been regional. How was this one published?
This was published by an independent press, so that actually they do some hybrid publishing also. This was not a hybrid. But yeah, I've had sort of the experience of, with the regional press, a Big Five press, and now with an independent press. So it's all different, and it's changed over time. When I first with the regional press, I mean, it was at that point in time, self-publishing was just like that was looked down on like a something awful. And that's changed a lot over time. I mean, if you want to get your book published now, you can do it if you really want to. But I was grateful that these folks, so this was Kohler Books that did this, very professional. The cover, which I can hold up here.
Yeah, it's on the poster behind you. Yeah,
Yeah,
hold the
it's on
book
the
up. Yeah.
poster behind me, and then here it is on a closer view. And so the way they do it there, which is very interesting, they asked me a lot of questions about the cover. How did I visualize this? Was there, give them examples of covers I liked, give them photos of ideas. And then they came up with four separate mock-ups of a cover and asked me to rank them, which I did. And then they put out the top two for in a poll for people on the internet to weigh in on. And so they told me, said, we don't always pick the top vote getter, but it's an indication to us of sort of, what people think.
Yeah.
And the top vote getter was the one that they picked. And so I was very pleased with that. I would feel very lucky to have had great covers. Really, the cover for the gendarme was hold that one up here.
Yeah. Is that the one on the poster behind you? Yeah. There.
Yeah, so that's this here, and
Yeah.
the main character, the woman who's being escorted, the gendarme is about the Armenian genocide, and it's about a young woman who was being escorted out of Turkey at the beginning of World War One, and so this is the woman, and she has mismatched eyes, and they did the cover where she has one eye color on the back and one on the front, so it was very, very cool the way they
That's
did it.
cool. If you're listening on the podcast, he popped open the soft cover, and you see half of her face on the front and half of her face on the back, and she has a different color eye. She has two different color eyes.
Yeah, so it was again, I mean, as an author, you want well, it's the words that matter. That's what I've really done. But a cool cover is a cool cover. If you love art, then it's pretty exciting to see that. So anyway, so I've been very fortunate in that regard.
Yeah, and people will say, "Oh no, and it's not the cover, but it is the cover. The cover is the first thing that people see, even before anything else. They can't read the blurb until they've seen the cover first.
Right,
So
exactly.
it's got to be something that is eye-catching, and both of those are. Before we get too far, just do a little elevator pitch of what Boy with Wings is about.
So, Boy with Wings is about a boy who has he's born with these strange sort of things on his back, and at first they can't figure out what it is, but it's weird, and people kind of when the neighbors learn, they kind of freak out about it, and through several different experiences, he ends up in a freak show in the 1930s, traveling around mostly the South in the U.S. And so I had done a lot of research about, sideshows, freak shows, and human oddities, and it was really, I don't know, it's fascinating to me, just sort of the way this has existed over history. I mean, this isn't just a recent thing. I mean, the Romans even before, treated people with human differences differently. Some of them they were, revered. Some of them they were not. They were treated horribly. The beginning in sort of the late 1800s, there became these sort of traveling shows where they would show these, human oddities, and they began in Britain and then moved over to the U.S. And Ripley's was, sort of the start of that, or then P.T. Barnum was the start of that here, and then it spread out throughout the country. So I wanted to feature, this book is sort of at the tail end of that. Sort of this is the start of the Depression. This is sort of a down at the heels freak show, but to him, it's somewhat like home because he's not necessarily he's not the only oddity. There's other people here, and he's sort of the star of the show. And so different things happen, and most of the book or a large part of the book is set in North Florida where I live, and so that played into it as well.
And it's very, I hate to say it's very literary, but it kind of is. But it blends the historical and it blends the paranormal, and it all works really well.
Well,
It's
thank
very I've been I like I'm like I said about a little over a third of the way, and I've been worrying about him so much from page one. I'm worried about him so much, so it's just like, oh, I got to get to the end to see what's going to happen to him. I'm so concerned. This is just a standalone though, right?
Yes, it is. So this is like I say, so this is my third novel, and and they've been spaced fairly far apart, not intentionally, but the first one was published in the year 2000 when some of your listeners probably weren't even born then,
Some probably weren't.
and then the Gendarme was in 2010, and so this came out this year in 2025. Boy with Wings did. So I've had a lot of other stuff. I'm a lawyer. I started a literary festival in the middle of all this, and so which is now in its 12th year, and so we're but I've continued to write all the way through, and I never a lot of people knew from like high school they wanted to be a writer. I really didn't. This came on me sort of later in life. It might have been even an early midlife crisis, but I just discovered I've enjoyed it. I think I have a little talent, and I try and write every day. I wrote some this morning, so that's sort of how I've done it.
Yeah. Oh, you're not the only one who thinks you have talent because you're an award winner. I'm looking at this list of shortlisted and actual awards, and wow, that's really impressive. And after reading the part of the book that I've read so far, I can see why. You've done a really good job at drawing people in, making us feel like these characters are real people, especially the sideshow freaks. They've been a really interesting group. Does
Well,
it, is there anybody like in your life that you might have tossed in to help shape some of these characters?
Well, yeah, I mean that's always the case. I'll tell you though, I tried to find a current sideshow performer to interview for the book, and I'd done a lot of research. I mean, in Florida, a lot of the shows, the circuses, and all wintered in Florida, and so there's a particular area down around Sarasota, Bradenton, where there were circus people retired, and there were retirement communities, and there's documentaries about sort of the giant who ran the diner and all this stuff, but I could never, I just couldn't find anybody. And so I pretty much finished the book, and I saw of all things that a sideshow is coming to Tallahassee. I'm like, great, so I sign up for the VIP experience, and so I can meet the performers, and then they cancel the show. I said, oh my
Oh,
God. And so, but then it gets rescheduled. And so this time I actually show up there and they go, oh, you're not here for that sideshow, are you? Yeah, they canceled that. Uh,
oh,
but I managed to find this guy through that was sort of the lead performer in the sideshow, and he had a website, and I got his email address, and I emailed him, and I said, well, hey, could we get together? I'd love to interview you just about your life. What's it like? And so we finally connected, and by this time the book was published, and so he and I earlier this year did several appearances together at bookstores. And when I told him, I said, well, I just want to ask you, I don't want to make you uncomfortable. I just want to ask you, what is it like when you walk into a room and everybody's turning to look because you look different than everyone else does? And he said, okay, he was game for it. And he said also, well, do you want me to perform? I'm like, oh, what do you mean? He goes, oh, I could do, and the picture of him on his website is he's breathing fire. I'm like, well, yeah, we're in bookstores. There's no
don't,
breathing
yeah,
fire.
don't
Yeah,
burn
no,
friends.
yeah.
Yeah, don't burn down the bookstore.
And so he said, well, he goes, I do this, the cup game where you guess, which cup the ball is under. He says, I do that, but I put a spike in the one, and then I slam my hand down on the others. And he said, if you Google magic tricks gone wrong, this is the first thing that shows up. And I
Oh,
said, well, if you want to, okay. So we did that in Coral Gables at Books and Books, and my daughter was the one that sort of moved the cups around, and I don't know how he did it exactly, but he didn't hurt himself. That was good. But he was a very interesting guy, and he had been, he said there's statues of me around the world. He goes, I've been everywhere, and he said that I said, well, do I mean, what is it like if you walk into Walmart, And he goes, well, it depends on what kind of day I'm having. He said some days, I really don't want to see anybody, and people are trying to be nice, but they say, oh, it's so good you're out today. I'm like, well, yeah, well, I'm just, I'm out just like you are. And then other days that doesn't really bother him. And so, but it's just, he said, I'm not a, I'm not trying to be an inspiration. He goes, and his particular situation, he's a half man. His body's cut off right below his rib cage. In fact, part of his ribs are cut off. And
yeah.
so he gets around on his hands and a skateboard and that sort of thing. But he said, I'm just a survivor, and I'm, pleased to do it, pleased to be here. So it was really fun to get to know him. It sort of fit in well with the book, and he paid me the highest compliment. If you're a writer of historical fiction, at all, he he asked me, so well, he goes, how did you do your research on the sideshow? Because he said, you nailed that. Yes. And I said, well, I read all these books. I listened, watched these movies and documentaries and everything, and told him some of the books. And one of them, there's this guy in Florida who is called the King of the Sideshows. His name was Ward Hall, and I read his biography. And Shorty, the guy that I interviewed, said, "I knew it." He goes, "I was on his show for 2 years." And, and and there's, it was interesting, and there's sort of a lingo. I tried to, focus on the fact in the book that, that there's some jealousy even between the people that have to work, the sword swallower and the fire breather, and the guy just that comes out and shows himself and goes back inside and gets paid for it. And so there's some rivalry there that I thought was interesting. And so anyway, it was a lot of fun to write the book.
Well, I felt, I'm trying to think if I ever been to a freak show. I watched the movie Freaks,
Oh
but I
yeah.
don't,
Well, yeah, that's a classic. So the 1932 movie. Yeah, so
yeah. So
for
if
your
you ever hear
listeners
people chanting, one of
right.
us, and
Yeah.
you have not seen Freaks, you will not understand the reference until you watch the movie Freaks.
Yeah, we really should see it because it's a classic. It was 1932, so this was, a little before Wizard of Oz, and just, it's the story of a freak show, and the freaks are sort of treated badly and rise up and sort of take over the show is basically the plot of it. But yeah, it's interesting that you've seen that because I've seen that a whole bunch of times in the course of doing this.
I think I made my family watch it with me. I used to be in film, and so a lot of the people I worked with had said, "Have you seen Freaks?"
Hmm.
No, you need to see Freaks. Like, okay, I'll watch it because I would get lists of films. You need to watch this, and you need to watch that, and I'd always go, okay, and go watch it because I love films. But Freaks was it was an experience,
Oh yeah,
definitely.
yeah. So part of my research, I read this book titled Freaks that was by this guy who was some kind of, I don't know, sociologist or something, but it was sort of examining why are people fascinated with human oddities? And it was very interesting, and part of it sort of makes sense. He said, that people, as a child, you're sort of, you're used to oddities. Everyone is a giant when you're an infant, or when you're a toddler. And so that all sort of made sense to me. I mean, it got a little weird. There was some, psychosexual stuff that I'm like, I'm not quite sure about this. But anyway, it was just sort of interesting that, to think about that. I mean, I would tell people it's sort of like the car crash you can't look away from thing. That people, you see something that produces adrenaline, and
Yeah.
you react in some way to that. And so anyway, it's just sort of interesting.
Well, I definitely, like I said, I hadn't been to a freak show, I don't think, but when I read the scenes where they're in the freak show, and I think they're still, yeah, he just had his 16th birthday, so they're still in
Right.
the freak show. It felt like I was there. I mean, I felt like it felt very authentic, even though I really don't have a frame of reference for it other than the movie Freaks. It still felt like it was how it was supposed to be, you know?
Yeah, there's a movie. So I don't know if you saw that. There's a movie called Nightmare Alley that there was a remake a couple of years ago with Bradley Cooper, and the original was from the 40s. But it captured this whole kind of milieu, pretty well of sort of the sort of down at the heels freak show kind of thing with different things. And Bradley Cooper plays a geek, which is not a, human oddity, but it's the guy who's a crazy guy that bites the heads off chickens, that sort of thing.
I think I
So
remember seeing a preview, but never saw the movie.
yeah, it's a dark movie, I will say that, but it's pretty good. So anyway, it sort of captured a lot of what I was trying to capture with this.
Yeah, and now you're not just a writer, but you also have that festival that you started, which kind of blends music and storytelling. And I looked at some of the past people you've had. I was looking at for this year, and I thought, oh, I want to go, but I'm pretty sure that we're on a trip that weekend, so you need to move the whole festival.
Right. I'll see what I can do. Yeah, no, so we started this. So when The Gendarme was published, I got asked to speak at a number of literary festivals around the country, and I'd never been to one. And so I went to the LA Times Book Festival. I was at the, Southern Festival of the Book in Nashville, the Decatur Book Festival near Atlanta. And I'm thinking, man, we should do something like this in Tallahassee. It was great. It's free. There's just huge crowds. Everybody's into books, and it was just a lot of fun. And so I was a city commissioner then in Tallahassee, and I said, well, I need to get off the commission before we embark on this because this would be too much effort and conflict and everything else. So But when I got off, I decided, I had a core group of people, and we said, all right, well, let's try and do this. But we said, rather than just being the Tallahassee version of the South Carolina Literary Festival, why don't we try and do something different? And we thought about, you could buy books with a lot of things. You have books in art, books in politics, books in the environment. But we sort of said, well, sort of the easiest thing would be books and music. And so we had the first festival in 2015. We accumulated money for 2 years. We had this awesome lineup, Ann Patchett and all these people. And then
Oh,
it rained
nice.
all weekend long. And
Oh,
so Ann Patchett, she was supposed to be performing outdoors in a tent. She was in a room maybe a little bigger than my office, and the humidity was such her hair was like standing on end, but she was a trooper. She did it. And so we had, but so it was sort of, things got canceled and it was a little bit of a mess, but we thought we had something. And so we've kept it going. This will be year 12 now. And I'm very proud of it. We've done some really unusual things that are, we have paired authors and musicians. We try and do it every year. And it's amazing what creative people can do if you put them together and say, go for it. And we don't put any preconditions on, so you guys figure it out, whatever you want to do.
so they do. You just pair a musician and an author, and then they do some kind of a joint performance.
Yeah, so here's an example. So we had the historian John Meacham a couple of years ago, and there's a woman who's a African American guitar phenom. You should look her up. Her name is Yasmin Williams. And
We'll put her.
so
Well, you send me a link, and we'll put her in the show notes.
Okay. And so I had this idea. I said, well, hey, we contacted each of them and said, hey, would you consider appearing with this other artist? And they said, yeah. And so we had one Zoom call for like 10 minutes and they talked about, well, yeah, we could do this, we could do that. Then we get to the festival again, like 10 minutes before, yeah, let's do this, you that, do that. And it was awesome. I mean, it was just, he had sort of this, different, parts of history wanted to talk about. She played Battle Hymn of the Republic. She did her own stuff. It was magical. And so that's, we've done several things like that. And, sometimes we'll ask an author, hey, do you have a musician friend you'd like to appear with?
Oh,
We had the author Joe Hill a few years ago, and he had a friend and they came and that was great. So we've done a lot of that. If you're a musician and you've written a memoir, and they all do at some point, we want you to come to Word of South because who else asked you to come and talk, about your book? So Ricky Lee Jones has been here, Sheila E. I mean, it's just, it's been, that's always, Rita Coolidge. I mean, there was stuff that came out from her book that, I don't think anybody ever knew. She says, and I take her at her word, she wrote the coda to Layla, the song, and never got credit for it.
I you know
And
I believe it.
yeah, and so it's like you're kidding me. That's just wild. So anyway, so that's the sort of stuff we've done. So it's so you got to come up, Melissa. If it's not next year, 2027, it's usually the last weekend in April, but it's sometime in April every year.
That yeah, that I mean that's I love music, I love books, and it's like what a great combination. Definitely. So how do you? Okay, how many performers? You said it's over a weekend, right? 2 days.
2.5. So there's a ticketed concert Friday night. This year it's Earth, Wind, and Fire, and then the rest of the weekend is free. So there's like 50 different acts on 8 different stages, and some are musicians, some are authors and musicians, some are authors. We have cookbook authors where we'll have somebody prepare some of their recipes, which is a lot of fun. I mean, it's pretty cool.
So how do you come up with all these people? I mean, you can't spend all your time just reading books and looking at records.
No, I mean we have a committee that, and then we, take suggestions too. I mean, and FSU has a creative writing department that's one of the best in the country. So the folks there sometimes we had somebody this year say, "Hey, he has a book out. Could we fit him in?" Yeah, let's do it. And then sometimes we have the independent bookstore in Tallahassee had gotten a grant for sort of a one read tally book. And so this year it's Richard Powers. So his new book is they're going to read. So he's going to be at the festival as part of that, which will be fun. So yeah, so it's all different. Sometimes we just seek people out. Like we had James McBride come, and he said, "Well, can I bring my band?" And we're like, well, yes. How much is that going to cost? But they came and they were good. I mean, it was a yeah, it was fun.
So for the authors and the musicians, can you buy? Here. So if I'm coming and I'm listening and I discover an author or a musician I'd never heard of before, can I buy their books and their music? Do they have them available at the festival?
Yeah, yeah. So the bookstore here in Tallahassee is called Midtown Reader, is the independent bookstore, and they're the bookstore for the festival. So if you're an author at the festival, they'll have your books for sale at the festival. The musicians, it's a little bit different because it's so, everything's so Spotify now and everything. I mean, most will have CDs to sell for whoever still has a CD player, that sort of thing. So and the larger ones will have merch and that sort of t-shirts and that sort of thing too.
Oh, cool. So then it's a true festival feel.
Yeah, pretty
Yeah.
much. I mean, we have vendors selling books and records and stuff, so it's all pretty cool.
Yeah. I was looking before we started, I was looking to see how far we are from Tallahassee.
You're 4 hours if you're in Orlando, so it's
It's
not
about
too.
4 hours with a bathroom stop. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
So I'd have
yeah.
to, I've had a, let's see. I don't know anybody, I don't think, in Tallahassee. If you live in Tallahassee and you want me to stay at your house, no, I'm just kidding.
I'm sure we can find somebody for you that would be happy to have you there.
I would love to. That's my favorite thing is to go to book events and discover just amazing authors. And I think the last book event I went to, I probably bought 20, 25 books. I think I had to go out to the car and drop the books off and go back inside because there were so many interesting authors and I mean, my shelves are pretty dirty right now, messy. They're everything. I've got stacks of books all around the office that I still need to redo my shelves, but I just love books so much. Music
Nah, I do
too.
too. And we're downsizing our house, so I'm having to part with some books, which is a painful operation if you've
Oh,
had to
yeah.
do this before. So, but I'm the same way. I mean, I have to, at the festival, I mean, these are world-class people, so it's just, I mean, some of the, nonfiction writers we've had are just, so it's, yeah, I'm with you. I have to, have a push cart to bring all that home.
Oh, yeah. It's just like heaven. It's absolute heaven. So back to books real quick before we stop. So you've been regionally published, the big five, indie. What did you feel? I know they're all going to be different and different. They're all going to be different in different ways. But what for you was the easiest one to navigate?
Well, the Big Five is particularly at the time I did it, was I mean, they did not everything, but most of everything, so they, including the publicity part. So, I mean, they, had paid people at the time, I assume they still do, that would go around to bookstores, pitching my book to be in the bookstore, part of their regular, route. And I was fortunate enough to be sort of a fall recommended pick for Penguin that year. And so,
Nice.
so my book got out there. I mean, any bookstore I went to in the country, I'd see my book, almost.
Oh,
And so that which is a fun thing. But so different with the independent publisher, most of the publicity is on you, as you know. And so I knew that going in. I knew it was going to be that way. And and the Kohler people have been great. I have no complaints at all there. And I spent I told myself, and I've pretty much done it, I said, I'm going to have to commit to doing an hour or two a day just on publicity for my book, which is, not really what I want to be doing, but there's just no, there's no two ways. Who else is going to do it? And so it's just a matter of, following up with people, hey, remember you said you were going to do this, and that sort of thing, or, can I be in your festival, or, blah, blah, blah. And so, I've learned a lot doing it. There's a few things I would do differently, but, I feel like I've given it my best shot. The book has done well. It's won a number of awards and hopefully maybe a few more to come here. So.
what's one thing you would have done differently?
Oh, I spent a lot of money on Facebook, I mean, on Amazon ads, and it did not work out as well as I hoped it would. And I don't really know why. I mean, I had consultants that help with that. And I'm still a novice at this, but the book would get lots of clicks, but not lots of purchases. And so I don't, I don't know that I would do that again in terms of just the investment didn't pan out in that regard.
Yeah, if you are going to do Amazon, I highly recommend, I'm going to say his name wrong, David Gaughran, Gaughran. I think he's Irish. He has free, if you go to his website, and I'll put that in the show notes. If you go to his website, he talks about Amazon ads, and he has different classes. He does stuff on YouTube. He just did a new Amazon ad class. Everything is free. You will pay a lot of money for the exact same information that he gives out in a lot of these classes that people have for you, for I mean out there, and then David will have the exact same stuff for free. So I would recommend going to his website to talk. He just did a new series on the Amazon algorithm, or was it Facebook? It's one of the two. He might do both. I'm still a little discombobulated from my travels. Anyway, but I highly recommend him because when I started using his method of doing stuff, my sales shot
Really?
way up. So I was very, very happy camper. And then algorithms changed again, and I haven't redone the new lessons that he's got listed, which I need to do. But anyway, so he's really good. I would I can speak highly recommend checking out his stuff. He also, if you're going to be buying ads, he tells you the best places to go for free or for 99 cents or for non sale books. The best places to do your ads. Of the different ones out there, what return you can probably expect. It's really, really good information that he's got out there, and it's all free.
Yeah,
So,
I might have to go look at Dave then and rethink this for the spring. So, but yeah, I mean, again, you live and learn, and I'm sure you've experienced this, Melissa. People tell you they're going to do stuff that and then they don't, and then stuff comes out of the blue that just lands in your lap, and you're like, oh my God, look at this. So yeah, so it's all part of the process.
yeah, yes, it is. Yes, it is. So, the boy, it's Boy with Wings. Show everybody the cover one more time and tell them where they can find this book. And I really highly recommend it.
So here's the cover, and you can go on my website, and there's all sorts of links to Amazon, to the you can get a signed book through Midtown Reader here in Tallahassee. There's other Barnes and Noble and independent bookstore spots there. But yeah, I hope people enjoy it. I'm proud of it. I think it's I hope it's representative of my work. You mentioned the literary part of this. I care a lot about the prose. And so people would say, well, how many times did you revise this? I mean, I lost count. I don't know, 25, 30, I mean, it's a lot of work to do it at the level I hope I do it at. So I'm glad to get it out there.
Oh, well, it's a very enjoyable book. And I'm going to leave here and go lay on the couch and do some more reading
Well, thank
and
you.
catch up. I'm really excited to see what happens. I'm really concerned about him, but
Email me afterwards and let me know what you think when you're done.
I
So,
will. Yeah, because I'll leave a review too. I'll go on whatever retailer I got it from and leave a review. So,
thank you.
so yeah, yeah. So thanks for so much for coming on. People can you have I know you have your links through your publisher, but do you have a web page also for yourself?
Yeah, it's markmustian.com. So just my name.com. And it's Mustian.
Okay, and I will have all those things in the show notes, and you will send them to me, but then I'll have them correct. One week, I was listening to the lady talk, and I wrote down what she said, and it would turn out to be a real website. And she wrote me and said, that's not the website. I'm like,
Oh no.
oh no, why did I write it down myself? Yeah, so don't trust me to write anything down. So thanks so much for coming on. And when you have your next book, you'll have to come back and tell us all about it.
I'd love to. And come to the festival. Come check it out.
Oh, I'm going to look to see. Okay, before we go, everybody's going to put up with me just looking real quick. I'm going to see when I'm out of town. It's April, right?
Yes, April the 24th to the 26th.
I'm gone.
Okay.
I'm
All right.
very sad about that. I'll make my husband change the trip.
There you go.
I've done that in the past. I can't go. There's something else I have to do.
Right. So, all right. Well, now I'll send you the 27 dates too. So you can plan ahead for that one. Tell them no trips during this time
That
frame.
one, oh yeah, yeah, I'll have to. Yeah, most definitely. All right. Well, thank you so much for coming on.
All right. Thanks, Melissa.
Thanks, Mark. I am a billion% bummed that I will not make Word of South Festival this year, but he suggested just put it in your calendar for 2027. And I thought, what a good idea. So I am going to make a little note. We have my husband's a travel agent. So we have a calendar where we put things on that we absolutely cannot have trips in these days. No trips can be scheduled. So a lot of stuff we do last minute. But anyway, so I'm going to put those days, I'm going to mark those days into the calendar for 2027. And I don't think I have anything planned for April of that year yet. I don't think I do. So I will be really excited to go. And I'm going to go check out the bookstore in Tampa that he spoke about. And everything that we talked about is down in the show notes. So go have a peek. Boy with Wings is really, really good. I can't stress enough. I'm not done with it yet. But the way it's written, I guarantee you it's not going to fall apart. I guarantee. Can I guarantee? I don't know. I'm going to go ahead and guarantee. And that's it for this week. I will see you next week with another great show. And in the meantime, go read a good book. The Books Cube theme music was written by Laura Lynn Hardy. She performed the vibraphone. Billy Tyke Miller performed percussion. And it was recorded at Mills Kids Recording in Huntsville, Alabama.